High Counselor Zextal's crystalline form pulsed with agitation as the emergency beacon lit up the grand chamber of the Galactic Council for the first time in 3 centuries. The last time had been during the Nexus Wars, and now, because of creatures who had barely mastered faster-than-light travel. "This is unprecedented," declared Sub-Counselor Vin, her tentacles writhing in complex patterns that betrayed her anxiety. A previously unknown species has not only discovered but activated one of the ancient outposts. The holographic display at the center of the chamber showed a remote mining facility on asteroid FK-427, officially designated as uninhabited space, until approximately 6 hours ago, when a team of human miners had quite literally stumbled into what should have been an undetectable facility. "How?" demanded Zextal. The outpost's cloaking systems were powered by quantum-locked crystals. They should have remained active for another millennium at least. Fleet Commander Raxire, a veteran of numerous first contact scenarios, stepped forward. His exoskeleton bore the marks of countless battles, and his cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on the display. That's where it gets interesting. The humans were using some primitive scanning technology they call ground-penetrating radar. They weren't even looking for the outpost. They were searching for mineral deposits. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and subsonic vibrations as council members expressed their disbelief. Zextal raised all 4 arms for silence. "Continue, Commander. The radar shouldn't have detected anything." But these humans, Raxire's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. They'd modified their equipment with parts from something called a microwave oven. The resulting interference pattern created a cascade effect in the quantum crystals. Pure accident. Pure human luck. The holographic display shifted to show footage from the outpost's internal security systems. A group of humans in bulky environmental suits were examining the ancient technology with obvious curiosity. One of them, presumably their leader, was carefully documenting everything with a handheld device. "That's Lieutenant Jasmine Rodriguez," Raxire identified. "She's their chief mining engineer. Watch what happens next." The footage showed Rodriguez approaching what appeared to be a standard power distribution node. She studied it for a moment, then pulled out a tool that looked like it had been cobbled together from spare parts. To the Council's collective horror, she began to interface with the ancient technology. "She's going to trigger the defense systems," Vin predicted, her tentacles curling in distress. "That's what should have happened," Raxire agreed. Instead, the footage showed the node powering up, its crystalline matrix glowing with energy. But rather than activating the defense protocols, it simply worked. Rodriguez had somehow managed to restore power to a section of the facility that had been dormant for millennia. "Impossible," whispered Zextal. "The compatibility protocols alone." She jury-rigged an adapter using parts from their mining equipment and something called duct tape, Raxire explained. When we interviewed her later, she said it reminded her of trying to charge an old phone with a new cable. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. These humans hadn't just discovered an ancient outpost. They'd managed to operate it with technology that should have been several centuries too primitive to interface with it. "There's more," Raxire continued. "Once they restored power, they found the outpost's database. Instead of trying to access it directly, they—" He paused, as if unsure how to continue. "Yes," Zextal prompted. "They took pictures of the interface with their personal devices and sent them to something called Reddit. Within hours, a global community of humans was working on translating the ancient language. They thought it was a game." Vin's tentacles went completely still, a sign of extreme shock among her species. They crowdsourced the decryption of one of the most sophisticated security systems in known space. "And they're making remarkable progress," Raxire confirmed. "Their methods are unorthodox, but effective. They're approaching it like something called a crossword puzzle." Zextal's crystalline form dimmed slightly as they absorbed this information. "Recommendations, Commander." Raxire's cybernetic eye whirred as he considered. Traditional first contact protocols won't work here. These humans, they don't think like any species we've encountered before. They solve problems sideways. Explain. When faced with a locked door, most species would either try to find the key or break it down. Humans, Raxire clicked his mandibles. They'd be just as likely to remove the hinges, go through the wall, or convince themselves the door isn't really there in the first place. And somehow, it works. The Grand Chamber erupted in discussion again. Proposals ranging from immediate quarantine to full military intervention were thrown about, but Zextol noticed that Raxire remained silent, still studying the footage. "You have another suggestion, Commander?" "Yes," Raxire said slowly. "I suggest we talk to them. Not as primitive beings to be managed, but as equals to be understood. Because if we don't..." He gestured to the footage where Rodriguez was now teaching her team how to operate ancient technology with improvised tools. They're going to figure out space travel their way. And I, for one, am very curious to see what they do with it. Senior observer Tycliffe struggled to maintain his species' characteristic composure as he compiled his latest report for the Galactic Council. After 3 months of covert observation of the human mining colony on FK-427, his research team had accumulated a dataset that defied conventional analysis. "Play latest observation log," he commanded his neural interface. The holographic display materialized, showing footage from the previous day's events. The humans had encountered what should have been a catastrophic failure in their atmospheric recycling system. By all logical assessments, the correct course of action would have been to evacuate the facility. Instead, log date 218745, Tycliffe dictated, "The humans continue to exhibit behavior that challenges our understanding of rational problem solving. When faced with a critical malfunction in life support systems, lead engineer Rodriguez and her team enacted what they called Protocol MacGyver." The footage showed Rodriguez and her team rapidly dismantling various pieces of equipment, including several personal entertainment devices, 3 coffee makers, and what appeared to be a vintage gaming console one of them had brought from Earth for nostalgic purposes. Rather than follow standard emergency procedures, Tycliffe continued, they constructed an improvised filtration system using components that should not, by any reasonable scientific standard, be compatible. Of particular note was their use of a substance called baking soda from their food preparation area, which they somehow incorporated into the chemical filtration process. His secondary brain cluster throbbed as he recalled the following events. The humans had not only prevented a disaster, but had actually improved the efficiency of their life support systems by 23%. When asked about the unorthodox solution, Rodriguez had simply shrugged and said, "You'd be amazed what you can do with stuff from the kitchen." Addendum to previous log, Tycliffe added, "The humans have begun what they call reverse engineering several systems in the ancient outpost. Their approach is concerning. Rather than attempt to understand the underlying principles, they simply try different combinations until something works. More disturbing still, these attempts have a success rate that defies statistical probability." The holographic display shifted to show a human technician, designation Thomas Patel, attempting to interface their primitive computer systems with ancient data crystals. His method involved what he called good old trial and error, and literal use of something the humans referred to as percussive maintenance. The humans have developed an informal classification system for ancient technology, Tycliffe noted. They categorize discoveries not by function or principle, but by how many Earth technologies they need to combine to make them work. They call it the mashup scale. Items requiring 3 or more combined technologies are designated as janky but functional. Tycliffe's external membrane rippled with distress as he reviewed the next section of footage. Of particular concern is their approach to the ancient power generation systems. Upon discovering that their tools couldn't directly interface with the quantum crystals, they created what they call a quantum Ouija board, a hybrid device that combines primitive electromagnetic sensors with components from their entertainment systems, and, inexplicably, a children's toy called The magic 8-ball. The most alarming part wasn't that they'd built such a device. It was that it worked. Additional observation of note: the humans have begun conducting what they call movie nights in the ancient facility. They project entertainment content onto the quantum crystalline walls, which has had the unexpected effect of creating temporary disruptions in the facility's space-time metrics. The humans are aware of these disruptions but consider them, quote, pretty cool background effects. They have started taking votes on which movies create the best distortions. Tycliffe paused the recording, his sensory appendages quivering with a mixture of fascination and dread. How could he possibly convey the full implications of what he observed to the council? These humans didn't just think outside of conventional parameters. They seemed unaware that such parameters existed in the first place. Final notes for council consideration, he resumed. The humans have begun theorizing about the original purpose of the ancient outpost. Their conclusions, while reached through entirely incorrect methodologies, are disturbingly accurate. They appear to have an innate ability to arrive at correct answers through incorrect processes, a phenomenon they call hitting the nail on the head for all the wrong reasons. He added a priority marker to his next observation. Warning: the humans have started what they call a suggestion box for potential uses of ancient technology. Current proposals include, but are not limited to, converting the quantum computational matrix into something called a Super Nintendo, using the spatial manipulation systems to create what they call a killer haunted house, and attempting to make the facility's matter replication system produce something called authentic Chicago deep dish pizza. The footage showed Rodriguez examining a complex series of ancient glyphs with a device she constructed from a broken scanner and parts from a karaoke machine. According to her notes, she was pretty sure she could get the facility's dormant transportation system working again. Her only concern was whether the spatial tunneling effect would mess with the Wi-Fi. Final recommendation, Tycliffe concluded, his voice modulating with barely contained anxiety. The council must decide quickly how to proceed with official contact. At the current rate of human innovation, there is a 72.3% probability they will accidentally discover faster-than-light communication within the next month, simply because someone tried to boost their social media signal strength. He added a personal note, something he'd never done in his centuries of service. These humans don't just adapt to technology, they remake it in their own image. And they do it with a casualness that suggests they don't realize it should be impossible. May the ancients help us all if they ever figure out what they're actually capable of. Fleet Commander Raxire's cybernetic eye rapidly processed the tactical display as 5 Galactic Council warships moved into position around asteroid FK-427. The situation had deteriorated faster than anyone had anticipated, triggered by what humans would later describe as a series of unfortunate events. Status report, he commanded, his mandibles clicking with tension. The human mining facility has activated several previously dormant ancient defense systems, his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Vix, reported. Our sensors are having difficulty penetrating their impromptu shields. They appear to be operating on completely random frequencies. Raxire chittered in frustration. The crisis had begun when an automated council probe had detected what it classified as unauthorized weapons testing at the ancient outpost. In reality, the humans had been attempting to use the facility's matter replication system to create the perfect cup of coffee. The resulting energy signature had unfortunately matched that of a banned planetary destruction device. Open a communication channel, Raxire ordered. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Lieutenant Rodriguez in what appeared to be a makeshift command center. She was wearing what looked like a spacesuit cobbled together from mining equipment and ancient technology. Lieutenant Rodriguez, Raxire began formally. The Council demands that you cease all unauthorized experimentation with ancient technology immediately. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Behind her, Raxire could see her team rushing about, carrying strange hybrid devices and speaking in rapid-fire technical jargon that his translation matrix couldn't quite process. With all due respect, Commander, Rodriguez replied, we're a bit busy right now. Your probe's attempt to scan our facility triggered some kind of ancient security protocol. We're trying to prevent what our systems are calling a quantum cascade failure, though honestly, we're pretty sure that's just fancy alien talk for everything goes boom. Raxire's secondary nervous system froze. A quantum cascade failure was theoretically impossible to stop once initiated. You must evacuate immediately. Our ships can. Yeah, no, Rodriguez interrupted, typing rapidly on what appeared to be a keyboard made from ancient crystal matrices and parts from an old game controller. We've got about 20 minutes before this thing goes critical, and we're not about to let perfectly good ancient tech go to waste. Tom, how's that bypass coming? Almost got it. Call the voice off screen. Just need to convince the quantum harmonics that they're actually in a stable relationship with the particle accelerator. It's like couples therapy, but with subatomic particles. Raxire's tactical training warred with his experience dealing with humans. Lieutenant, what you're attempting is impossible. Yeah, we get that a lot. Rodriguez grinned. But here's the thing. We've been studying this facility for months now. Did you know these ancient systems are surprisingly similar to old Earth vacuum tubes? Just, quantum. Once we figured that out, it was just a matter of applying some good old-fashioned electronic engineering principles. With a few creative modifications. The tactical display suddenly lit up with warnings as energy readings from the facility spiked dramatically. Vix's exoskeleton paled. Commander, they're rerouting the cascade failure through their coffee maker. Coffee maker/quantum harmonizer, Rodriguez corrected. Turns out caffeine molecules have some interesting properties when you run them through a quantum field generator. Who knew, right? Raxire watched in disbelief as the humans executed what should have been a suicidal plan. They were treating universe-ending catastrophic failure like a particularly challenging puzzle, approaching it with a combination of scientific knowledge, improvised technology, and what they called winging it. Operation Caffeine Quantum is go. Someone shouted off screen. The facility's energy signatures began to stabilize, but in patterns that defied all known laws of physics. What did you do? Raxire demanded, his cybernetic eyes struggling to process the readings. Rodriguez shrugged. We basically convinced the quantum cascade that it was actually a really complicated coffee percolation process. The system is now busy trying to brew the perfect cup of coffee at the quantum level. It might take a few million years, but hey, better than an explosion. Right. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of someone in the background asking if anyone wanted to try quantum percolated coffee. For science. Commander, Vix whispered, the Council's automated defense systems are detecting the facility as both critically dangerous and completely harmless simultaneously. They're confused. Welcome to dealing with humans, Raxire muttered. Louder, he addressed Rodriguez. Lieutenant, while your solution is unprecedented, the Council cannot allow unauthorized experiments with ancient technology to continue. About that, Rodriguez said, her expression turning serious. We've been meaning to have a chat about these ancient systems. See, we found some interesting data about why this outpost was here in the first place, and let me tell you, it's not what your council thinks it is. She pulled up a series of holograms showing ancient text and diagrams. This isn't a military outpost or a research station. It's a backup system. The ancients built it to prevent exactly the kind of cascade failure we just stopped. Your automated systems have been misidentifying it for centuries. Raxire's mandibles clicked in surprise as he processed this information. But our best scientists were overthinking it. Rodriguez completed. Sometimes the simplest explanation is the right one. We found the ancient equivalent of a user manual in what we thought was a decorative crystal. Turns out all it needed was someone stupid enough to try reading it with a modified barcode scanner. The implications were staggering. If the humans were right, the Council's entire understanding of ancient technology would need to be reevaluated. And they had discovered this not through centuries of careful study, but through what they called messing around and finding out. "I will need to report this to the council," Raxire said carefully. "Sure thing," Rodriguez nodded, "but maybe mention that we've got the coffee maker situation under control. We're pretty sure we can get it to make hot chocolate too, once we figure out how to explain marshmallows to the quantum physics engine." As the communication ended, Raxire turned to his second-in-command. "Vix, update our first contact protocols. Add a new warning. When humans say they have a solution, prepare for reality to be redefined." High Counselor Zextal's crystalline form flickered with barely contained agitation as the emergency council session entered its fourth hour. The holographic displays showed a bewildering array of data from the FK-427 incident, including what the humans called their patch notes for the ancient facility systems. "Let me understand this correctly," Zextal addressed Lieutenant Rodriguez, who was attending via quantum link. "You're proposing we allow humans to debug ancient technology across council space. Think of it as a collaboration," Rodriguez replied, her holographic form gesturing enthusiastically. "Your scientists understand the theoretical foundations, but we bring a fresh perspective. Sometimes you need someone who doesn't know something's impossible to make it work." Senior observer Tyclith, who had been summoned to provide his analysis, vibrated with concern. "The humans have already modified the FK-427 facility in ways that violate at least 37 council regulations regarding ancient technology." "Modified is such a strong word," Rodriguez countered. "We prefer creatively reinterpreted. Besides, check out these efficiency ratings." She pulled up a series of graphs that caused several council members to emit frequencies of shock. The data was undeniable. The humans had somehow improved the facility's power output by 300%, reduced its quantum instability to near-zero levels, and even managed to make its interface compatible with something they called open-source software. "But how?" Sub-Counselor Vin demanded, her tentacles writhing in confusion. "Your species hasn't even mastered stable antimatter containment." "Well, that's actually an interesting story," Rodriguez began, but Fleet Commander Raxire, who had been quietly observing, cut in. "They didn't try to master it," he explained, his cybernetic eye whirring as he studied the humans' modifications. "They went around it. Instead of containing antimatter, he paused, mandibles clicking in what might have been admiration or horror. They convinced it to contain itself. We call it the honor system approach to particle physics." Rodriguez nodded. "Turns out if you set up the right quantum feedback loops, particles start self-organizing in ways that traditional physics says they shouldn't. We got the idea from watching how people queue for coffee in our break room." The council chamber erupted in a chaos of clicks, whistles, and subsonic vibrations. Zextal raised all four arms for silence. "This is unprecedented," they declared. "The council has spent millennia studying ancient technology, establishing careful protocols." "Yeah, about those protocols," Rodriguez interrupted, pulling up another display. "We've been looking at your regulatory framework, and we think we've found the problem. You're treating ancient tech like it's sacred and mysterious, but from what we can tell, they were just really good engineers who liked to document their code properly." She highlighted a section of ancient text that had baffled council scholars for centuries. "See this. It's not a mystical incantation. It's a bug report. A really detailed one, actually. The ancients were total documentation nerds." Tyclith's external membrane rippled in shock as he reviewed the translation. That actually makes sense. But how did you?" "One of our junior engineers used to work in tech support," Rodriguez explained. "She said the formatting looked familiar. Once we started treating ancient texts like they were Stack Overflow posts, everything clicked." The revelation sent ripples through the council chamber. Centuries of careful, reverent study were being appended by humans who approached ancient technology with all the casual confidence of someone rewiring their entertainment system. "We've prepared a proposal," Rodriguez continued, bringing up a new display. A joint human council initiative to revitalize ancient facilities across the galaxy. We're calling it Project Legacy Update, though personally, I wanted to call it Operation Have You Tried Turning It Off and On Again. The proposal was simultaneously brilliant and terrifying. The humans wanted to establish mixed teams of council scientists and human engineers, combining theoretical knowledge with practical innovation. They had even created a ranking system for facility restoration priorities, based on what they called cool factor and potential for awesome. And what about the quantum coffee maker? Raxire asked, unable to contain his curiosity. Oh, that's the best part. Rodriguez beamed. We figured out it wasn't just trying to make coffee. It was trying to achieve perfect coffee. The ancients apparently had a sense of humor. The whole quantum cascade thing. It's basically a really elaborate safety protocol for preventing bad coffee. We're still working on explaining the concept of good enough to it. Zextal's crystalline form pulsed as they processed this information. The humans weren't just offering solutions. They were proposing to fundamentally change how the Council approached ancient technology. And the most disturbing part was that their methods, however unorthodox, worked. There is one more thing, Rodriguez added, her expression turning serious. We found references in the ancient database to something they called the Grand Archive. We think we know where it is. And more importantly, we think we know why it was sealed. The ancients weren't trying to keep people out. They were waiting for someone crazy enough to try getting in. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't just stumbled onto an ancient outpost. They might have inadvertently fulfilled an ancient prophecy. Though knowing humans, they'd probably call it a beta testing requirement. Show us, Zextal commanded, their tone carrying both resignation and anticipation. Sometimes, they reflected, the wisest course of action was to accept that the universe had a sense of humor, and humans were its favorite joke. The Grand Archive of the Ancients wasn't quite what anyone had expected. Located in what humans would have called a cosmic backwater, it resembled an enormous crystalline snowflake suspended in space. As the joint Human Council expedition approached in their ships, senior observer Tychlith couldn't help but notice that the human vessels had been extensively modified with what they called quality of life improvements. Are those cup holders? He asked, watching the human ships maneuver with surprising grace. And a built-in espresso machine, Lieutenant Rodriguez confirmed over the comm channel. You'd be amazed how much better spatial navigation gets when your pilot is properly caffeinated. Fleet Commander Raxire, who had insisted on personally overseeing this mission, clicked his mandibles in what had become his signature expression of resigned amusement. Over the past 3 months, the Council had learned that trying to prevent humans from modifying technology was like trying to stop a star from shining. Technically possible, but generally inadvisable and potentially explosive. Approaching the outer marker now, Rodriguez reported. And, that's interesting. The Archive's defense systems had activated, projecting a complex series of quantum equations into space. According to Council protocols, this should have initiated a days-long process of careful calculation and response. Got it, called out Thomas Pottle from one of the human ships. It's a CAPTCHA. A what? Tychlith's external membrane rippled in confusion. You know, one of those prove you're not a robot tests. Pottle explained cheerfully. Except this one's asking us to prove we're smart enough to be stupid in the right ways. Look at the pattern. It's not asking for the correct answer. It's asking for the most interesting wrong answer that still works. The Council scientists watching the feed erupted in protest, but Rodriguez was already implementing what she called Plan Ridiculous. The humans transmitted a response that, while technically incorrect according to all known laws of physics, somehow caused the Archive's barriers to dissolve with what sounded suspiciously like a chuckle. The ancients had a sense of humor, Rodriguez noted as their ships entered the Archive's main docking area. They didn't want their legacy found by people who'd treat it like a museum piece. They wanted people who'd treat it like a really cool toy they found in their grandparents' attic. The interior of the archive defied description. Vast halls of crystalline memory matrices stretched in every direction, containing the sum total of ancient knowledge. The council scientists moved cautiously, their instruments trying to make sense of the overwhelming data density. The humans, naturally, headed straight for what looked like a central control panel. "Lieutenant," Raxair called out, "perhaps we should follow standard first contact protocols." "Already done," Rodriguez interrupted. Her fingers dancing over the ancient interface, she'd somehow adapted to work with what she called a jury-rigged quantum tablet. "We said hello, introduced ourselves, and told it a joke. The system likes us." As if to prove her point, the archive's main display illuminated, showing what appeared to be ancient text mixed with emoji. The ancients invented emoji. Tychlith's shock caused him to temporarily lose control of his color shifting. "Not exactly," Paddle explained, studying the display. "The archive's just trying to communicate in a way it thinks we'll understand. It's learning from us as we learn from it. Pretty cool, right?" And that, Raxair realized, was exactly what the ancients had been waiting for. Not a species that would preserve their knowledge unchanged, but one that would take it and make it new again. The humans weren't just accessing the archive. They were teaching it, changing it, making it evolve. "Hey, check this out." Rodriguez called from a secondary control station. "We found their research notes on faster-than-light travel. You guys are going to love this." They were totally overthinking it too. All that quantum field manipulation. Turns out you can achieve the same thing with what they called folding space, like a really complex origami. The council scientists crowded around, their initial skepticism giving way to fascination as the humans explained the ancients' work in terms of paper crafts and coffee cup physics. Somehow, reducing universe-bending concepts to simple analogies made them more comprehensible, not less. "There's more," Paddle added, his excitement palpable. "The ancients left messages about why they built all this. They knew they weren't going to be around forever, so they created these facilities as a kind of cosmic treasure hunt. They wanted to find a species that could look at the impossible and say, 'Hold my beverage.'" High Counselor Zextel, who had been silently observing via quantum link, finally spoke. "And they found humans. More like we stumbled into it backwards while trying to make better coffee." Rodriguez grinned. "But yeah, I guess we fit the bill." The ancients weren't looking for perfect successors. They were looking for people who take their work and make it better, even if that meant breaking a few laws of physics along the way. As if to emphasize this point, the archive's systems began displaying a series of achievements the ancients had never quite managed to perfect. Each one was accompanied by helpful notes and what appeared to be ancient equivalents of "good luck with this one." "They left us homework," Paddle laughed. "Really, really complicated homework." Raxair watched as humans and council scientists began working together, the barriers of protocol and procedure giving way to genuine collaboration. The humans' casual brilliance combined with the council's deep knowledge created something entirely new, exactly as the ancients had hoped. "You know what this means?" Rodriguez asked, looking up from a particularly complex ancient diagram. "The whole galaxy is basically one big open-source project, and we just got contributor access." The archive's lights pulsed in what might have been approval, or possibly laughter. After all, the ancients had known something that the council was only now beginning to understand. Sometimes the best way forward isn't the most logical path, but the one that leads to the most interesting mistakes. And humans, it seemed, were masters of interesting mistakes.